second grade. How are you today? We are going to be diving into time this week. Isn't that exciting? We are going to be getting our targets ready here in just a second, and then we're going to be thinking about what we already know about time. I know you've done a lot of work in first grade, and we're going to add to that today. But let's go ahead and get our targets ready, and we're going to get right in and get started. I can tell and write time to the half hour. So tell me, second grade, what do we already know about time or about clocks? What do we already know? That is called an analog clock. Absolutely. This one right here, that's a circle. That's an analog clock. And what do we know about that analog clock? It has the numbers in a circle. My numbers are a little wonky today. There are two hands. Tell me about the hands on the analog clock. There's an hour hand and a minute hand. And which one is which? That's right. This one is our hour hand. And that hour hand, tell me about it a little bit. It's the shorter hand. And it points to the hour. Where are the hours on this analog clock? These are the hours, absolutely. Each of these 12, there are 12 hours, and those are the big numbers on our clock. Even when we see our little Judy clock here, we can see those big red numbers, and those are our hours. And there are 12 of them. You're so smart. What else do we know about those hands? Ah, yes, our minute hand. And what do we know about our minute hand? It's the long hand. It points to the minutes. Yeah. So if these are our hours, then what are our minutes on a clock? And how do we know how to get those minutes? I'm hearing some friends say, well, this isn't 6, it's 30. How do we know that? How do we know that? You're right. If we take a peek at this analog clock, you will see that there are little dots in between each of those big numbers. And each of those little dots is worth 1 minute, okay? So if we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, when that 1, 2, or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we point to our 2, and we're actually going to put those up there to help us remember it. It might even cover up with some of the things we already have, but it'll help us remember, and then we can add that in, make it smaller another day. So what would go on that 2? Then we have our 10. What would come next? And we have our 15. What would come next? Very good. 20. Well, what are we counting by when we see these big numbers? We're counting by 5s. 25. What about the next one, everybody? 30. Then what? 35. 40. Very good. Next to that, 8. 45. And 50, next to that 10, absolutely. And then what about next to that 11? 55. What about by this 12? Do we say 60, right? But it's also starting fresh. So we don't say 160, do we? No, it starts over a brand new hour. And so when we get to this 12, it starts back at that o'clock, right, for our minutes. It's a fresh start. Very, very good. So when we're counting, when we see these minutes, this blue hand is reaching. I like to say it's reaching past that hour and it's pointing to those minutes that we know are there. And you can actually see that a little bit easier on our Judy clock, right? You can see, if I was going to make the same time that's up here on our clock, on my Judy clock, you would see that the minute hand is reaching past that 6 and it's pointing to that 30 at the bottom of it. Absolutely. Is there anything else we know about clocks that we haven't put down already? There's another clock down there, isn't there? Absolutely. This clock right down here that we can't see too well, I'm going to move this up a little bit and move that up a little bit, is our what, friends? You're right. It is our digital clock. And how is that different than our analog clock? It's just the numbers. There's no hands. How is it the same? It has hours. What else does it have? It has minutes. Absolutely. So when we're looking at a digital clock, we know we've got our hour and we still have our minutes. So there's similarities and there's differences between these two clocks. They both show us the time. This one shows it using hands. This one shows it using numbers. Very good. Anything else we need to add to our chart for right now? Then I'm going to move it to the side, and I want us to be keeping an eye on it and using it today to help us think through our work. So I'm going to put it up over here, and then we're going to be diving in and looking at clocks today. And remember, friends, this tool is something we're going to have up all the time. We can always use it as a resource, okay? So let's take a peek at our Judy clock. I love my Judy clock. You all have small Judy clocks at home or at school. And they have those two hands, and not all hands are colored, but as we're learning about our time, those colored hands help a little bit, don't they? Absolutely. One thing I didn't ask you is when we're talking about our hour and our minute, when we read those times, what do we say first? Do we say the hour or do we say the minute? If we say 3:30, which one are we saying first? We're saying our hour first. And I'm thinking that's always true, but let's keep an eye out and see if that's still true at the end of the day today. There's lots of different things we're going to be thinking about. And one thing we want to be keeping an eye out is, what do we notice happening over and over and over again? And that will help us think a little bit more about our clock learning, okay? So I'm going to show you a time. And I bet you guys already know this time. What time does this say? It says 2 o'clock. It sure does. How do we know it says 2 o'clock? Our hour hand is pointing to the 2. Our minute hand is pointing to the 12. And we remember that when it points to that 12, it starts out as a fresh hour and it says o'clock. Absolutely, those fresh zeros. Now I'm going to do something, and I want you to look and see, what do you notice? So I'm going to move that minute hand, and I want you to look carefully. What do you notice is happening? What do you notice happened? The minute hand's pointing to the 6 now. What else do you notice as I move that? The hour hand isn't pointing to the 2 anymore. You're right. Why isn't it pointing to the 2 anymore? Because it's not right on the hour. It's not 2 o'clock anymore. As the minute hand goes around, as it goes to the next set of minutes, even as we count 15, 20, 25, 30, the minute hand's gone how far around the clock? It's gone about halfway, right? Remember when we talked about fractions a couple weeks ago and we were looking at our circles, and we know that when we look at those circles that we can divide it into 2 equal parts, right? So when we look at our fractions, it's they can divide it into two equal parts, and that is half. And when you look at this clock and you look at this guy right here, that line is going right down through the middle, isn't it? Yes. So we actually call that the half hour. Can you all say that for me? Half hour. So we're going to be talking about the half hour today. And each of our times that we think about are going to be imagining this clock being divided in half. And that's at that 30-minute mark, okay? So if this was 2 o'clock, then what is this time? What is our hour? Our hour is still, so I'm going to draw my little clock up here, and you guys are going to get really good at watching Miss Baker draw my clocks. They're not always perfect circles, but I try to do my best. So when I showed you my picture of my clock, I had my minute hand, my long minute hand down there, and my short hour hand was actually between the 2 and the 3. What do we say that is? It's 2:30, our hour, and then our minute. And why is it not 3:30? Because it's not to the 3 o'clock yet. You're right. It can't be 3:30 if it's not to the 3 yet. This whole space in here is that 2 o'clock hour. That means it can be anywhere in between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock. All those numbers in between. Now, our minute hand has gone halfway around the clock, and we read that as 2:30. But I'm going to give you a new word we're going to put on our vocabulary chart over there, and that is something you might hear somebody say if they're talking about time to the half hour. And we actually call that half past. Can you all say that with me? Half past. That means it's halfway past 2 o'clock. So I see my clock. I know my time is 2:30, but I also might call that half past 2 because it's halfway past that 2 o'clock mark and it's 2:30. Okay? We'll be hearing it a couple different ways today. All right? I'm going to show you another one. And as I do this, I want you to think about this little girl who this little time is about. A little girl named Lucy, and she starts her piano lessons at this time. Are you ready? Hold on to your hat, second grade. Lucy starts her piano lessons at this time. What time? Can I have you write in your journals? Write the time, write the digital time. Remember, the digital time is just using those numbers instead of using the hands. Write the digital time for this clock. What's the hour for this time? Why do you say 4? Okay, because it's past the 4. Not quite to the 5. You're right. And our minute hand's on the, okay, so then what is our minute going to be? If our hour is 4, what's our minute going to be? 30. Very good. Again, I'm going to draw our little guy up here. Notice when I'm writing this, and you guys will be able to practice this tomorrow. I do my 4 sides, and then I write my numbers in between. It's a pretty quick way to draw a clock. Okay, so you said the hour hand's between the 4 and the minute hand is on the 6, and that says 4:30. Can we call it something else? Yes, very good. We also call that half past 4 because it is in fact half past 4. It's halfway past the 4 o'clock mark. And it's also, if you look carefully, The hour hand is exactly halfway between the 4 and the 5. It was exactly halfway between my 2 and my 3 with the first time. That's half past. Very good. Now, I'm going to give you some times. I'm going to show you them up here, and you're going to write them in your journal. We're going to practice doing a couple more. Remember, you can write it, I want you to write it digitally, but you might also write it in a little phrase saying half past something. Okay? Oh, we've got a helper. Are you ready for the time? Okay. What time does this say? Write it for me. Tell me what time you wrote. Ooh, you said half past 1. What was your digital time that you wrote? 1:30. Do you agree with that? I see somebody putting their thumb and they're not wiggly waggling. They're not doing this. Tell me why you're not wiggle waggling. Ooh, you said you thought it might be half past 2. Tell us why. Did anybody else make that same mistake? That can be a little tricky, can't it? So let's help us figure that out. Tell me, when you look at this clock, or you look at this one, which number has it passed? That means it went by it. Has it gone by the 2 o'clock yet? Or has it gone by the 1? It passed it by. Let's see. Let's go back to that 1 o'clock. Which number did it pass? It passed the 1. Has it passed the 2 yet? It hasn't. So when you say half past, you're actually going to be saying half past the hour that it is. Let's see if that's true in everyone. Half past 1, 1:30. Half past 2, 2:30. Half past 4, 4:30. Let's look at the next one. We want to make sure that it's true in every time that we do it. So let me show you another time. What do you think? Tell me what you think the time says. But you over here. You say 7:30. Can you tell us why you think 7:30? Because it's by the 7. It is by the 7. It is by the 7. Is it in the 7 o'clock hour? Oh. I don't know if you heard what that friend just said, but he said, oh, wait, no, it's not to 7 o'clock yet, so it can't be 7:30. You're right. It hasn't gotten to the 7 yet. Absolutely. So what time is it then? Yes, you're so smart. 6:30. Very good. So it's in the 6 o'clock hour. It's past the 6, but it hasn't gone past the 7 yet. And so how else would we describe this time? Half past what? It is past the 6. Very good. And there we go. Half past 6, 6:30. Very good. All right, I've got 2 more for you to do, and then I'm actually gonna have you all do this on your exit ticket. So you're all gonna get your little index card, and I want you to write the digital time for these 2 clocks that I'm putting up. Are you ready? And then we'll talk about them a little bit tomorrow when we start our next lesson. Oh, this wonky donkey. Okay, so there's one. There's my minute hand for that one, and there's my hour hand. So we want to know, what time is that? And then our next one, this is kind of a humdinger, okay? I like to say humdinger for those problems that are going to be a little tricky. So it might bring up some conversation as you're working, okay? Here's the next one. Now remember, you can always write, also in addition to your digital time, you can also write half past. So take a peek at these two clocks, and I want you to write the digital time for them, and then we'll talk about those tomorrow to kick off our lesson. Think about, what do you notice is true about all of these clocks? I can't wait to see what your work is. Remember, if you feel really good about these exit tickets, you can put them in the green. If you think, I know a little bit, but I'm not quite ready to say I've got it, you're going to put it in the yellow. And if you say, if you think to yourself, I have no idea what I'm doing, you can put it in the red, and that'll tell us what you think about your learning so far.